is going on? Okay, so I I probably have to wait for at least a couple of people to get in here because I have some news that is just so, I mean, it's almost borderline ridiculous. I just got a phone call from, okay, so the godfather of door-to-door sales is a guy by the name of Kenny Brooks. I have showed this guy's door-to-door sales in every training class that I have ever done ever. You might know who he is. He goes by Kenny Brooks, the funny salesman, and he sells like cleaning products, and I mean, he sells personality is what he says. He's a stand-up comedian now. He travels around the world. He's performing with Marlon Wayans. And so I watch his videos because I show them to my guys too. And I say, guys, this is it's genius what he does. And I sent his people. He's got like, I don't know, a few million people, fans on social media between, I mean, I think he has like 900,000 people that follow him on Instagram. And so anyway, he goes around the country. He does stand-up comedy. He knocks on doors. So I sent him a message because I'm fanboying, and I go, hey, listen, I just started this thing. I just want to tell you, and I've put your videos on every single training class that I've ever done to start out, a training class. I find you to be amazing. And I said, we're not big. I just started this thing, but it would be an honor. You're the GOAT. If you could come on and I could, and I could interview you. And I didn't hear back from him at all. And then about like an hour ago, he sends me his phone number, and I just got a chance to talk to him for probably about 10 minutes. And he's on Cam Newton's podcast. He's performing. His manager's Timbaland. I mean, he's big time. And he was like, brother, I'll help you out. And so the Kenny Brooks, I can't even believe this. The Kenny Brooks has actually agreed to come on and just and come on and be, just shoot the breeze. And this is Kenny Brooks right here. He's the funny salesman. Blown away. He said he had to get back to me, had to get with his manager. And he actually asked me if he was like, so do I like fly into your studio or how does this work? I'm like, no, we'll do it on a video chat. It'll be a lot of fun. And he was like, yeah, he's like, dude, I'll help you out. I was like, you are the GOAT. You are the GOAT. So I am so excited about that. I wanted to talk about something that I posted earlier, which was, has anybody ever experienced a literal like lunatic, somebody who is out of their mind, just like nuts? And I think we probably all have. This story is the strangest story you could possibly imagine. It starts with a handwritten letter. So I worked for a company and we had a rebate program, and the rebate program was for the home performance program with many states. Many of you know what this is. That rebate program, it's lush. It's a good program. It includes air sealing and insulation and all sorts of stuff. So we sent out a piece of marketing, and the response we got back to the marketing was a handwritten letter from a woman in pencil who said, I'm interested to hear more about this. I don't have a telephone, but I'm very interested in having somebody look at my equipment, look at my stuff. And I'm very interested in this. So please, send somebody to my house. To which a woman that worked in our office sent her back a letter and said, well, what dates are good for you? And they went back and forth with like 3 or 4 letters. And I mean, it was interesting because I think there was a level of like, let's just see where this goes. So she sends back the letter. They agree on a time. And of course, at the time I was doing HVAC sales. So I was the lucky individual to get a chance to meet said individual. So the house was in an area. I roll up. There's very little parking. I found a spot. I knock on the door, and I should have known from the very moment that the door opened. That door opened, and I saw this person, this woman. I'm talking like you could just see it in her eyes that there was like the lights were on, but there was a whole lot happening that wasn't happening, that might have been happening, or it was happening and it wasn't happening all at the same time. And so I'm like, hi. And so she quickly greets me and she's like, come in. Are you here? Are you here for the appointment? You're here for the appointment? Yeah. Let me just, if I could just come on in. And I'm like, okay. So let me just describe, she had like greasy, grizzly, curly hair. She's probably about 5 foot, maybe 1. And she was like, the house was kind of sterile. It wasn't dirty. It was old, maybe. I walk in, house is about 120 years old or so, but it wasn't, again, it was orderly. As I'm looking around this house, I start to see these like trinkets and these things. And then, so she takes me to go into through the dining room into where the basement goes. And as I'm walking through the dining room, I can't help but to notice in the side of my eye that there is like, how there's those school fairs, the school book fairs, and they have those things that open up and there's all the kids' books inside there. She had one of these in her dining room. And I also noticed, and I wasn't sure exactly what it was, but I noticed something in the chairs of the dining room, but I didn't know what they were. And so I go downstairs. As I'm walking downstairs, I can just tell. I mean, I'm there. This is 20 minutes, maybe if that. I can tell something is wrong. Like I'm in danger. I walk downstairs and I noticed that there is this, it was a boiler system. I noticed that there was this weird hole, like with a cover on it, like a metal or plywood cover over this like hole in the ground right in front of the boiler. I'm looking at her and I'm trying to gauge. Okay. So I always carried my, my like pocket knife, Leatherman kind of deal next to, on me. So I'm starting to like, know where it is. Like, okay, something's weird here. I look in the basement. I look across the entire length of the basement, and along the wall, there is a shelf, and it is like, the entire shelf has mason jars, empty mason jars lined up along the entire basement, like the entire thing. And so I'm just like, hey, I like to diffuse the situation. I'm like, hey, I noticed you have all these mason jars. What's the mason jars? What are the mason jars all about? I'm just curious about the mason jars, because I'm just, curious. And she's like, oh yeah. Well, when the babies are born, when the babies are born, we're gonna do all sorts of things. We're gonna do activities. We're gonna plant things. We're gonna put things in the mason jars, and we're gonna have the mason jars and the mason jars. And I was like, okay. So she ends up, I'm like, okay, red alert here, but I'm like, I'm bigger than her. I don't see a weapon. I'm like, okay, we'll keep going on here. So we go back upstairs and we sit down and I start to, ask her just some basic things that you would do. But before I did that, I was walking back through the dining room to see what I had missed. I thought I saw something. I didn't know what it was. And I look over, and in the chairs of the dining room are 2 car seats, baby car seats in the dining room, and they both have stuffed animals, stuffed teddy bears in them, like just sitting there. And I'm like, okay. Now I look over and I see a baby on board like thing that you'd see from like 1990. Like no joke, like those suction cup ones that were back on the cars back in the 90s and stuff like that. So I'm like, okay, clearly trauma, something happened. I don't know, whatever it is, or this lady has completely fantasized about this whole thing. I have no idea. She's not making any sense. I started to talk to her, and she starts telling me a story about she had to get rid of her phone because it was the neighbor. And she kept going on and on about a neighbor. And so she's asking me about this program, and she's asking about if she can get 2 programs, one for each baby. And she's clearly not pregnant. And so I start to see that she's visibly getting like, okay, I'm now like red alert, like whoop, whoop, like danger. Like, so now I'm like, oh yes. Oh, we'll figure all this out. We'll get you all the things. And for sure, I'm looking at her book collection. She's got this just weird books everywhere. It was just like the strangest thing. So I noticed that there's steps upstairs. I wasn't sure if I heard something up the steps. I'm like, am I alone here? Like, this is really odd. And it's dark. It's like really dark up these like colonial style steps. It was just so odd. So she's going on and on and on. I'm just like, okay, I got to find my exit. How do I find my exit? And I smile. Yeah. Oh, we'll go ahead. Well, yeah, I'm going to take a look. We're going to work it all up for you. Yeah, for sure. And like, she's kind of backing up to the door, like not quite letting me out. And I'm like, hey, I just got to go and work all this up. And then she's like, kind of like, and then I smile, and maybe I'll be charming and she'll let me out of the house. And finally I got out of the house. So what I would say is, Lauren, if you watch this, thank you for that. That was awfully nice of you to write those letters. So, hope you enjoyed that story. Thought that was one of my cooler sales tales. Without further ado, I have here today a woman who probably needs no introduction. Many of you know her. Her name is Estee. She works for Certain Path. Estee, come on.
How's it
How are
going?
you?
I'm good. How are you?
Oh, Estee, doing really good. Really good. I hope you enjoyed that story.
I did, and I've run into a few of my own unique customers in the past, so I felt like I was right there with you experiencing it.
Well, that's good. Hopefully my storytelling is okay. And
Yes,
then
spot on.
so Estee, tell us about yourself before you go into all of the adventures. I could go on, but go ahead. Let's hear it.
Well, I've been in HVAC as an industry for about 16 years now, and I got into the trades on accident, I guess I like to say. Um, I was with a temp agency out in Southern California, and they placed me at a heating and air conditioning company. And they brought me in, help with paperwork, kind of an assistant. And they quickly realized that paperwork isn't really my strong suit, but talking to people is kind of my thing. So I like to say they found me the right seat on the bus and put me in sales lead coordinating and whatnot, and just kind of worked my way through, eventually made it out into the field as a salesperson. And that's where some of my funny tales kind of begin. So
Mm,
out in Palm Springs, have you ever been to Palm Springs before?
a long time ago.
Okay. So it's beautiful. It's hot. So air conditioning season runs from, I don't know, now February till about November. So lots and lots of sales calls to run, and it's hot. So I mean, I thought, coming to Texas, everyone says, "Oh, Texas is so hot, it's crazy." How do people live there? Our summers were about 115 degrees average.
Yeah,
So,
the desert. It's
mhm,
hot.
yeah.
Yeah.
So running around a lot, I got to really deal with a lot of people. Our season was not a very short season. Um, I'm going to preface this. A lot of my stories involve nudity, and I hope that's okay.
Hey, listen, there's 4 rules, and one of the rules is if you're offended, it's you're the problem. So yeah.
So one of my favorite ones that I love to tell, not only did it like stroke my ego because it turned into a really good day for me, but it taught me a very good life lesson living in Palm Springs. And so I'm going to start with the lesson and I'll work my way back into the story. And the lesson is this: if the wall is taller than 10 feet around the community, something strange is going on inside the community. So I'll start with that. And
Okay.
so I'm a newer comfort advisor. I'm probably, oh gosh, this was a while ago. So maybe late 20s, very early 30s. So younger.
And so for those that don't necessarily, comfort advisor is a fancy name for HVAC sales rep. Go ahead.
Right. I mean, we take the word sales out of it. So it's all about everything else but money. Right.
Right.
And so I get to this community and I pull up, first time being out in this neighborhood in Palm Springs. And it's a very, very tall wall, gated community.
It's a
And
wealthy area, Palm Springs.
yes, absolutely. It's a lot of retirees, second homeowners, vacation properties, all of the like. And so I get there and I get buzzed in. And as soon as I go in, it's kind of a long entrance. And I'm like, this is pretty grand, you come through, it's all pretty and lush. And then there's a guest parking spot right at the beginning of the community. So I park my car and I start walking, and I'm walking past the tennis courts. And if you've ever seen a cartoon double take, I'm pretty sure that was me, because I realized the people playing tennis were naked. And the people hanging out kind of over to the other side, in the lawn area, were naked. And the people by the
Mm.
pool were naked. So I realized I found myself in a nudist colony.
Right, but it was regular houses. It was a regular neighborhood, right?
It's a condo community, so a whole bunch of condos. Um, this is an area where I was familiar with the fact that there were nudist colonies, but this was kind of a back entrance that my GPS took me to. So I guess I didn't realize that's exactly where I was. And so as I'm walking up to the house, all I keep thinking is look straight ahead, but it's kind of like a car wreck and you have to look, right? They're playing.
I got news for you, Esty. I don't think they care.
Oh no, I'm sure they love it, but they're playing
Yeah.
tennis
Look away. Look all
with
you
no
want.
clothes,
Yeah.
and it's never the
Think about the
people that
logistics of that. Think about the logistics of that for a second. You're playing a competitive sport and you're naked.
with balls flying at you at high rates, well, not super high rates of speed, because the average age is probably 60 at least. So just imagine the things that move around as they're playing. So, I'm a little bit captivated, and I just keep telling myself, please let my homeowners that I'm working with have clothes on. Please let them have clothes on. And so I knock at the door and 2 people answer the door with clothes on. I'm like, oh, score. Okay. This will be easier for me. And then they tell me, hey, the units are up on the rooftop. It's all packaged units up there. You're going to have to go through this service entrance. And when you're done taking a look, come back down. And here's our unit number. I was like, great. So far, normal, except for the, auxiliary people around me. I go up on the rooftop. I come back down. I'm ready to sit down with the homeowners after I do my inspection. And I knock on the door and they open the door and now they're naked.
So they weren't naked when you got there. You got there to, you were going to talk to them about an air conditioning system. You go to look at the air conditioning system. You come back down and now they're naked. So now red flags, right? Because they were like, oh,
sure. And I have to be professional and give a full-blown air conditioning sales presentation to a woman, full-blown, sitting right in front of me, maybe as far as my computer screen is from me, naked.
and how old was this couple? You're saying 60 something?
they were probably maybe their 50s, but she had had some work done, and I got to tell you, she looked pretty darn good.
Yeah,
So,
but so let's just I want to dive into this for a second here. So
sure.
the thing is that they were clothed when you got there as a stranger. You're a stranger.
Hmm.
You, they were
Yeah.
clothed. And
Yeah.
now they decided when after you got there that
Hmm.
they were going to be unrobed, derobed, if you
Yeah.
will.
Yeah.
So
And, young, naive me is telling myself, oh, they're in the comfort of their own home now. So, of course, they got comfortable.
yeah, but you didn't think to yourself like, okay, they're naked for a like they decided to get naked. Like
Mhm.
it was a conscious decision. Like you didn't think to yourself like, uh, they decided to get naked while I was here. That didn't cross your mind while you were there.
Of course it did.
No.
But
Okay.
what do you do? It's it's like the weird part was that they were clothed. So I
Well,
can't
you,
say, "Pardon me, can you put your clothes back on?"
you
I feel like they should like,
well, let me
"Honey, we're in a
let
nudist colony."
well, Esty, come on, you were like a crown winning sales champ. You know, you got to do what your customer wants, right? So at that point in time, I think maybe as a sales rep, who knows? Maybe I would have just derobed also. But hey, let's just join in the party. Might have helped me sell the job. I don't know. Who knows? You don't know.
I told you there's a really good part at the end of this where I come out of this a winner.
Okay.
So, I put my professional face on, right? I'm like, "All right, I've got to present to boobs without looking at them."
Right.
And so I go through, I'm doing this as best as I can. And I'm talking to them and I'm like, you know what? We're going to have to hire this really expensive crane to come lift it. I've got to shut down like a major street here. That's the expensive part here. Do any of your neighbors know if they want to replace their systems too and share the cost of the crane? They're like, cool. So they call all the naked friends over and now we're having a naked party. I'm not, but they are. And I ended up selling 3 different air conditioning systems to the
Oh,
naked people.
nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
So
That's a
sticking it out
great.
paid off.
So there's a lesson in there too, because obviously, you know, as a sales rep, I mean, you got a referral immediately, like right there
I
while
too.
you were in the nudist colony.
Mhm.
So uh, let me just because I'm curious because I also had Jen on here and she's you know a HVAC technician. She owns her own business, and I'm curious because obviously now I've known quite a few. I guess there's a softening. It's not quite as hard of a challenge to overcome or a dichotomy to overcome when you're a woman in like an HVAC sales role or any sales role for that matter that is in like a male led industry? Or do you feel like you always kind of had to overcome the fact that, you know, you're like, people would be like, oh, where's my HVAC guy? Like,
Yeah. So in the beginning, I really thought that I would have to overcome that a lot. And so I overcompensated in the beginning, got a little too technical, attempted to show them I'm the expert by kind of word vomiting on them in tech terms. And then realized, oh, most of these people don't care. In fact, they're pleasantly surprised that a sales guy isn't here, and they've opened up to me probably more so than they would have with a guy. I was only thrown out of one house because I was a female, and it was by another woman, which was even weirder. So
mm.
she's like, "This is not what young ladies do," and she made me leave. So, like, okay, great, but
So Michael Disney says, well, that's awesome. Naked party with invoices.
yes, right? Like you get an invoice kind of party. Yes, it was awesome.
Yeah, that's funny. Oh
But no,
man.
I think in this industry in HVAC for women, number one, they don't expect us to come there. So I don't think there's creepos waiting for women. And I'd never worried. And like you, I carried something on me, a knife to get into attic accesses as needed. And we connect with people. I know I'm generalizing now, but I think it's a really cool industry for females to be in. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I agree. So so then tell me then you were in the desert and
Mhm.
then I mean you're obviously you're in Dallas now. So tell how about this? Can you tell me, have you run sales calls in both states?
I have not. No, my
Oh,
whole
okay.
in the field career was all in California.
Mm. Oh, so you get all the the totally normal people in California.
Oh, of course. I mean, most people go to sales meetings totally naked. And I told you I have several naked stories. I don't know why, but they all kind of revolve around nudity. It's weird. Palm Springs is a fun place to grow up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What else? What else has happened in your travels? What's some of your more memorable moments?
Well, for me, kind of breaking through in this industry, starting to make a name for myself as a female expert felt really good. And I think the biggest moment was before I became a coach with Certain Path and a trainer with Certain Path. I was on the membership side with the company that I worked for in California. And so I, like all of the other people, competed against the rest of the country in Canada, and seeing my name up on that screen in the company of some of the best top salesmen in the world really made me feel good. Um, the year that I kind of broke the barrier was when I became the first female to do over 2 million with Certain Path. And I think I ended up in the top 5 in the nation that year. And
Mm,
so to be standing up there with all these guys saying, we women can do this too. And
mm.
seeing now more females come into the industry and come through my sales training classes, it's just so gratifying to know that it's opened up, and I don't think it's the male dominated industry that it used to be anymore. Or I'm hoping that it's transitioning to where people don't see it that way.
Yeah, the reality is it is, but it doesn't mean that it can't change, right? I mean, and it is
Right.
changing. I mean, women in HVAC, what you're doing, what so many others are doing in the industry, and the names go on and on. So yes, it's changing, but unfortunately, it's just one of those things. So people have to get past that dichotomy. But as we move into the future, I mean, I've been seeing, I mean, look, I've been doing this now for what, like 7-8 weeks or whatever it is. The response has been like unreal. I mean, I go to my pages now and I'm like, I get like, it's really, really cool. I'm really blessed, and I'm noticing more and more and more like, females in the trades, and it's great. It's great for the industry. It's great to tell my daughter like, hey, if you want to grow up and fix stuff, you can grow up and fix stuff.
Yeah,
If you want to grow up and sell stuff, you can grow up and sell it. If you want to do whatever you want to do, you can do. Right.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I'm waiting for you to bring up the fact that the reason why I know you is because we're in a very random sports fan group together.
Hmm.
You knew I was
Is it
going to do
a,
it, right? You knew I had to
yeah.
bring it up. It
Yeah.
has to be
Is
done.
it,
I mean,
is it so sad?
that we can share this pain together, that makes me happy that I'm not the only one dying inside every year because our team can't get it together. But at least I know you're out here also dying with me. And so that makes me feel better.
Four, four plays,
And our season
four
was over.
plays, four plays. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know what I say though? And I say this because I walk around my office with a Yeti cup all the
Mhm.
time. And I'm like, do you know how you know that I'm a loyal person? The Jets are quite literally, if you look at like the most losingest franchises in the history of football, they are literally one of the worst winning percentage teams in the history of football.
Yeah.
And staying by him every year. I mean, it's crazy to watch the debacle. And it's got to be like ownership, leadership. It has to be something baked into the organization, because you see high quality organizations function all the time. And, like consistently, like there's these organizations that are always winning, right? Like the Yankees. I'm a huge Yankee fan, thank God. And they're just always winning. They just do whatever it takes to win. And so I think that there's something baked into the culture. I also think, and this is a crazy little theory here, but there's a theory about, Joe Namath basically sold his soul to the devil. And
We've all heard it. Yeah. And it must be true.
I heard this conspiracy theory that the owner of the Baltimore Colts in Super Bowl III, I heard this theory, actually bet for the Jets to win the Super Bowl, because there was so much money and influence invested in making the league merger between the AFL and the NFL, that at the time that they had to have the Jets win in order for the AFL merger. So they even want to take that away from us.
They can have it. We weren't even born. We weren't even a speck in our parents' eye. We need one in our generation, something to look forward to. And everyone kept saying that this season was our season. I'm like, I didn't see it with them to begin with.
You know, speaking of that, have you what's like the nuttiest like sports nut call you've ever run then? I'd be curious to see. I mean, if you came into my house, you'll see some Jets stuff on the wall. You'll see some Yankee stuff. I got a Jets helmet back here. But I'm just curious. You ever go into a house where it's just like a fanatically crazy person?
Not so much fanatically crazy where they had stuff out, but when they found out that I was a Jets fan,
they cried.
They got mad.
Why?
I mean, mad. This was a Patriots fan.
Oh God.
And they were like completely shut down, didn't want to really talk to me anymore. And this is why when I train in sales classes, they're like, well, we can talk about sports. I'm like, oh, you got to be so careful with that, because you will get the people that are like, no, I already hate you. I don't know you, but I hate you. So
like sports and also religion. It's interesting too. Here's what's really interesting. I was actually on a sales call with a guy who is from Israel. He is Israeli. Okay. He is openly Jewish. He's cool. He's like, whatever. He's like very thick accent. He's like, yeah, I'm from Israel, whatever. He's a great guy. I love this guy. Okay. And he went into a sales call and the woman was also Jewish. And she, like the whole deal. Well, here's the thing. At the end of the sales call, she pointed out that even though he was trying to like have rapport with her by talking about like certain things, like she was open. I mean, she had stuff all over the house, you know. She said that, you know, she was like, you know, I don't know, you know, I probably wouldn't have done that, you know, because everything was going on. It just happened in the, everything that happened out in Israel. So it's pretty crazy, but it is crazy because you have to like pick and choose your battles. The sales aspect is such a psychological warfare. You just don't even know what you can and cannot say. You have to like kind of poke and prod, see where you can go, stay as neutral as you can, but you also need to bond in rapport. So how do you bond in rapport if you don't have common ground and commonality? And anyway.
No, totally get it. And I always say, you know, religion, politics, sports, and sometimes, especially during political season, which we're in again, you know, well, when is it? Not really, but people like to talk about it. And I teach people, get really good at nodding. That's a great point kind of stuff. So you stay vague enough to where they still feel like they're connecting with you and they'll go on and on, but you don't have to give an opinion, because while everyone has an opinion, some people may not appreciate yours, especially your clients.
I appreciate what you're saying. I get it. Yeah. I appreciate that. Yeah. I appreciate that. That's I completely see it from your perspective.
There you go. See, good at this.
Yeah. No, I've run a call or two. So I'm curious, how did the progression happen from like, I mean, you just kind of like natural progression, your company belonged to SGI at the time and you just like, whoop, kind of swooped right in and.
No. So I was at the first company and had been looking into going to work for Goodman, Amana, and Daikin. And I had been very open with my boss at the time. And he was like, yeah, I see that's a great step in your career and I'll help you. And he actually talked to them on my behalf and was like, she's great. And everything was going to happen. And then it kind of fell apart after they had already told my boss that they were hiring me. And so I got replaced and anyways, turned into a big, long thing. So I went to another heating and air conditioning company for a while and then went to Goodman, Amana, and Daikin for a while. And then as a Goodman territory sales manager, you know, your job is to schmooze with clients and keep the relationship healthy. Sales. And my old boss, who I had worked with at the first company, he ended up buying the company from the previous owner. And so now here's my friend that I was a manager with, and now he's the owner. And we're out to dinner to have, a client conversation. And by dinner, I mean at the bar with lots of drinks, that kind of dinner. And we're getting philosophical and talking. And where do you see yourself in 5 years? And, this is a friend of mine. We've come up in the industry together. And I was like, if I could do anything, I really just want to teach and train. And he's like, oh, well, why don't I call SGI, which is Certain Path now, and talk to them, because I do part-time facilitating with them. I'm like, oh, great. So my old boss made the connection for me to come over to Certain Path, where I've been for 6 years now.
Yeah. And for those that don't know, explain what Certain Path. I know this isn't a business podcast, but I'd like to, some color. What does Certain Path do?
Yeah. So our goal is to help contractors in the roofing, electrical, plumbing, and HVAC trades learn best practices. We give them service and selling tools. We offer software. And as part of their membership, they get to work with a coach. So I'm a coach for the HVAC, plumbing, and electrical trades. And I teach the HVAC comfort advisor and selling technician classes, and then the service technician classes as well.
Let me ask you this, because you worked with so many people. What's like the coolest story you've heard from, like, you don't have to get specific. I know you can't say names. You have there's hundreds of clients at Certain Path. What's the coolest story you've heard? I'd love to hear this, because you've worked with hundreds of companies.
So this one was kind of a fun one, and it just happened, which is a beautiful thing. So it's fresh in my mind. I was just teaching a class a couple of weeks ago, and it's a service essentials class. So I have a room full of technicians, all the mixed trades, and we're talking about how do you go above and beyond for your customers? What are some of those things that you can do? And the normal answers come up, hey, I change a light bulb in the attic if I'm going up there. Hey, I clean the spider webs off the windowsill, the stuff like that. One guy goes, well, I have one, but it's kind of a weird one. Do you mind if I share? I'm like, sure, go ahead and share. And so this is out in rural Texas, probably, a couple hours from here. And he said, I show up to this house, and this woman is sitting outside with me, and we're talking, and she had told me, she didn't want the dogs to get out, but her kid opened the door. The dog comes running out. The dog goes and attacks one of the goats or something on the property. And now she's running around, screaming, freaking out, and the goat is dying. And I guess her son went inside the house to go get a gun to shoot the goat to put it out of its misery, and then the son had PTSD and started shaking and dropped the gun, and the mom is screaming, and the son is on the floor. So the technician picked up the gun and shot the goat.
Wow.
I guess that's truly above and beyond.
Wow.
So he won.
And that probably happened over the course of like 3 minutes.
Yeah. Screaming, crying, goats dying, and then he went to go do a service call.
Wow. One of my guys got attacked these people were extravagantly strange. They were wearing, like, I think Elvis costumes in the house. And then they agreed to do the job, but they said that he couldn't do the job unless they sang karaoke together. And then and he's a Marine veteran. He's like, all right, whatever. So then he goes out, and, they had a pit bull, or two pit bulls, two vicious dogs that were locked up. So they let him out. He goes to his truck. Well, they were outside. The homeowner had forgotten that they were in the fenced area of the yard. He climbs up onto his car. He gets mauled. He gets mauled by these dogs, and he's kicking him off, and he's trying to kick him off, and he's getting bit all over. I mean, he had to go to the hospital. It was a big deal. He said these neighbors came by, and the neighbor came by with like a bucket and like a mop, and they were like these old like, don't worry, we got it, we're gonna get him off of you, don't worry, we got it. Like he was like, what the heck's going on? Yelling, screaming. He's trying to call the homeowner to come outside. They don't hear the call. He's getting mauled by these dogs. He's got, you know, hillbilly Jim over here coming out with a bucket and mops trying to push the dog away. It was an absolute disaster. And that he actually had to go on like short-term disability. Like he was like mauled.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
There you go. See, it's not safe in our field. SD people don't realize that. It's not safe.
I took some wasp stings to the back and chest to be able to make a sale at one point. A black widow went down my shirt sleeve and bit me, and it's the second time I've been bit by black widow. I don't know why I'm not Spider-Man yet, but I'm not. And
what?
Yeah, in an attic space. Because I had been bitten before, and I know what it felt like. And as soon as it happened, I was like, oh, crap. And so I'm shaking my shirt out, but I'm in an attic straddling over trusses. So there's not much you can do unless you want to fall through the ceiling. So I get out of the house and get into my truck, strip my shirt off, shaking it out, looking for this thing. Can't find it. But now my arm is starting to radiate heat and I can feel it. And so by that evening, I was in the emergency with my second black widow spider bite.
Well, tell me about that. I never even met anybody. I've only heard about it in like movies and stuff, TV and National Geographic, and like everybody ends up like, you know, with these like almost dying.
Know. And I asked the doctor the same thing. I'm like, why am I not dead? They're like, well, for babies or animals, it would do more because they're tiny and you're not. So you're just going to get sick and feel bad. I was like, great.
So what does it feel like? What I mean, I'm curious.
It feels like getting stung by a bee. So you feel the initial prick and then it just kind of radiates. And then for me, it got bad and like I couldn't touch my arm. It was really sore. And then I felt like I had the flu.
Oh, wow. Is it a neurotoxin? Does it affect you like your thinking?
No, it just hurts like a bitch. So
wow. And that's the second time. And was both of them in the field?
No, one was in bed, and that's even worse because I wouldn't sleep in my room for like a month after that.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's nutty.
Yeah, and the wasps, I walked into a bush to get to a condenser that was hidden with overgrowth and went right into the nest, and they all flew down my shirt. And Mrs. Homeowner came running out because I screamed, and she ripped off my shirt for me and ran in the house and grabbed wet towels and ice packs and was like packing me down, and they bought a system.
Oh, yeah.
The things we have to do to sell. I mean, that was a pity sale, but I will take it. It hurt.
I can't even imagine. I don't even know how many things I've been bit by, like insects. I've been bit by in people's in like yards, going out to the side, you know, like on your hand. I just ignore them now. I'm like, oh, I'm stung by a bee. Great, you know, because here's where do they like to hang out? Right by the air conditioner, right?
Yeah.
Oh, exactly and it's not those it's not like a cool, like cute bumblebee. It's always like the yellow jacket bees that actually serve no purpose at all. Like none. There's no, I don't care. You know, everybody can hate me. Like there's no purpose. Those things just come up and they hit you. Oh my gosh. Yep. I was mowing my lawn once and one got me right in the back of the knee. And I literally threw my back out. I went, whoop. I mean, if people were watching it, it'd been like a cartoon. Yeah. Okay, so
my husband's going to hate that I'm going to tell this story because, so he was out doing the yard and a wasp came out of a hidden little nest area. And
so I was in this house, which is your house now.
And I was in your house. Okay. Anyways, the thing chased him for a few feet and he ran and hit the sidewalk crooked and he broke his foot being chased by a wasp. And I'm such a loving wife that when he needed crutches, I got him crutches and then I ordered crutch covers with wasps all over them to remind him.
Wow. Wow. That's funny, actually. That's really funny. That's actually like a good, yeah. So,
Yeah.
so that being the case, okay. So have you ever heard of like, and I'm nothing crazy. Like, I'm just talking like lighthearted, like somebody like absolutely getting like just creamed in a house, like something happened. They fell down somewhere, fell through somewhere. Have you heard of anything where,
Well, I've had some of my technicians fall through a ceiling before, but I once had this, bless his heart, 80, 90-year-old homeowner. And he's like, "Oh, honey, I'm going to help you." And I'm like, I appreciate it, but he'll break or die or something trying to help me. And I went to go grab my ladder from the truck, and I'm walking back in the house, and there's a ladder from probably 1776 when the country was founded, set up for me to climb. And I was like, "Ooh, I really appreciate the sentiment, but I'm not allowed to use your tools, so I'm going to put mine here." Any other ladder, I probably would have climbed right up, but I was going to die if I climbed that ladder. And so I set up my ladder and I climb up there, and then all of a sudden I disappear to go look at some ductwork, and I hear, "Hello?" This 90-year-old man climbed up in the attic with me in the middle of the summer to come do work with me to make sure that I was okay. Again, bless his heart. And I know that's a bad thing to say in Texas, but I'm not originally from here. And so I'll use it wrong. And all I wanted to do was run back to him and like carry him down the stairs so he wouldn't die, having now climbed my ladder. And so now I would probably be liable for this poor older gentleman. So
oh, that happened to my buddy Russ. My buddy Russ was he was in an attic, had an older guy, and he went up in the attic and he told the guy, he's like, "I got it, don't worry about it." And the old guy's like, "No, I want to check it out. I want to." And so he's like, "No, it's okay. I'll be right back. I'll be right back." He's like, "Oh, no, let me check it out with you." So go up the steps, walk up the ladder, and my buddy's inspecting, and wouldn't you know, he fell through his own ceiling.
of course he did.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
he's hanging there. He right through, hanging there on the attic, and then like, so they had to, my buddy like help pull him out. And
That's
oh
awful.
man.
I mean, I
Yeah.
had a scare once with a customer that insisted on going up on a rooftop unit with me on his flat roof. So I felt a little comfortable with that. Like, okay, there's not a lot you can get into trouble with up here. So I was like, "I'll hold the ladder for you," um, which was probably really dumb on my part because he's wearing a kilt.
Mm.
And so he climbs up the ladder, and there's nothing under his kilt. And
Oh my
so
gosh.
he goes first. Very, very nice gentleman. I was not his type. I was not his gender type. So he was not interested in me at all. But we climb up onto the rooftop, and so I have a nice vantage point of all the houses next to me. And the next door neighbor is out hanging up his giant white underwear on his clothesline. Giant. Naked. I told you there's a lot of nudity in my stories. So there's this big fat man next door that's naked, hanging up his giant tighty whities, and I've got dude with the kilt here with no panties on either. I'm like, what freaking Twilight Zone kind of job do I live in where this is the norm? I'm not even surprised by it anymore. It's another day in air conditioning sales. I mean, who says that? It's crazy.
Mm. I'm curious what the decision-making process there was to wear a kilt, like when somebody's coming over to inspect their air conditioning system. Like,
You
they
know,
forget you.
I love when people do their own thing and are who they are. And he was just a kilt loving, neon green haired, happy, jolly person. So,
Mm. I've asked this to everybody, and I'd be curious. One of the things I bring up is that, we, for at least for me, I think for most of us, the people that we meet in our travels, the average person doesn't spend a whole lot of time in other people's houses. They just don't.
right.
I mean, and you and I've spent thousands and thousands of houses, and a lot of these people, meeting their kids, meeting their their grandparents or their uncles or nephews or just friends that come over. There's experiences. I mean, I've loved finding out so much about just different people. Like it makes me tick. I love it. And so for me, this position, this world that, I've embraced for so long has really shaped me. And I'd be curious if you have a shaping moment, a shaping customer, a shaping person, individual that has,
Yeah. Probably one of my favorite calls that I ran was a gentleman that was a retired professor. And when I got to his house, he said, "Hey, you're the third person out here to work with. And so I kind of know what I'm looking for," which, in our world is like, great. What do I have to unteach him that he's learned so far and teach him about the right way to, that this should be done. And so I'm going through my process and he stops me in my tracks and he goes, "You're a very intelligent person." And I was like, "Thank you. That's very nice of you to say." He goes, "Well, no, I'm being serious here, and I can tell you're very intelligent." And he went into something about my speech pattern and the thought process that he could see me using when I was formulating whatever he thought I was formulating. And he's like, "Do you mind if I do an IQ test on you?"
Hmm.
I was like, "Okay." So he's like, "Let's go sit outside." It was a beautiful day, and so we're sitting outside under a big tree and we're just talking about life experiences, and he was telling me about his days as a professor and some of the things and ways he's been able to influence students. And it's at least an hour sitting outside under this tree talking with him. And then so he gave me his version of an IQ test, and at the end of it he goes, "How do you think you did?" I go, "Well, I'm not sure. You're the professional, what do you think my IQ score is?" He goes, "I'm more interested in how you perceive yourself
Mm.
than what I'm going to tell you about you." And so
Mm.
I had to answer this question of how do I perceive myself? And I was like, I feel like I'm a fairly intelligent person and I feel like I can make some bad decisions, but that's human nature. And I don't feel like it's because I lack intelligence that I do that. It's, emotional reactions to things. And he goes, "That's a very intelligent answer." And so he went into, kind of talking about what intelligence means and how we exhibit it and the difference between emotional intelligence and actual IQ intelligence. And it still just stands out to me as probably one of my favorite calls I've ever been on, because what an interesting way to spend an afternoon. And this turned into like a 4-hour call.
So what was your IQ? Just kidding.
I don't remember. I was more focused on how do I impress him and make him think that I'm smart,
Okay. So he ended up really wanting to know what how you perceive yourself.
Right.
So that's interesting to me because then my take would be to go through life and ask myself, how do others perceive me? How am I perceived? And maybe walk down the road of maybe it'd be interest. I don't know, perception in general.
Yeah, and imagine thinking about that. Is the way I perceive myself the same way that others perceive me? And if not, what's the disconnect? Am I putting something out there that I'm not recognizing as a part of me that either I don't want to show or isn't the true side of me? So, I mean, what a deep conversation that can get into, and what a weird way to stumble upon a conversation like that, with a total stranger that I was just trying to sell air conditioning to.
Is there a level that says maybe you shouldn't care so much about what people perceive about you?
Oh, of course. And I think for those people that truly don't allow others to dictate how they feel about themselves, that's a gift. And I feel like most of us strive to get to a point where that is a truth about ourselves. But for the most part, I feel like I'm constantly having to work towards that, depending less and less on what others think of me and the feedback of others, and depending more upon how I feel about myself. And
Mm.
that that's a long journey, that doesn't happen overnight. And for me, it took a lot, and I'm still on that path. I was just talking to my husband tonight. I said, you know what? I realized my coaching style tends to lean sometimes towards a similar way that I parent, almost like my parenting style. And I thought about that. I'm like, you know what? That's because I became a mom at a young age. I became a mom at 18. So
Mm,
I've been a parent my entire adult life. So that's how I know how to adult.
mm.
So it's weird. Like, where do we learn to become high functioning adults that don't rely on what others feel about us or think about us, and don't allow that to completely influence our own thought process about ourselves? Does that make sense?
Yeah. It's a lot to think about. And your role, you probably have to, it's continuous because you're training people, you're coaching people, and the impact that you have in their lives because you're helping them run the possession in which they pretty much cherish the most other than their family, which is their business. And I mean, A, it has to be really rewarding, but B, there's a lot of responsibility there. So I think you have to have this introspection continuously, which I think is probably what made you a pretty amazing salesperson. And then furthermore, gave you the confidence to be the business coach that you are, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think you're right. I feel like the meetings that I get to have with the members that I have the privilege of working with help shape me. They help me to grow into a better coach and a better trainer, because they allow me to make my own mistakes too. I'm not perfect. I, I get to wear the title of coach, but it doesn't mean I know everything. It mostly means I'm a really good ear for you, someone who understands and has empathy and has a process to share. And that's where I feel like my role is not so much in leading people or anything like that. It's understanding people and helping them to see themselves, their businesses, their employees in a different way. And doing all of that, I mean, how do you not start to look at yourself differently in what you
Mm.
do?
I think your businesses you coach should probably hear this. You should probably send this to them so they listen to it. It's just neat, just interesting perspective. And I not that I haven't, but I haven't heard. This forum is for this exact reason, right? Because we spend there are a ton of business building podcasts, and I've said this on almost every episode, which is like I love it. I don't get me wrong, but we do it all day, every day, and sometimes I think we just need a breath,
Mhm.
and we need that introspection.
Yeah.
Estee, let me as we wrap up here, would like to hear from you. Maybe one more experience you have in the old noggin for old time's sake here.
Have you ever been paid in $8,000 in $1 bills for a job before?
No.
Have you ever been concerned about where the money came from because of somebody's profession?
Nope. No, I don't
Okay.
care.
So I'm
No,
working
I
with
don't care. Is it green?
beautiful. Yes, it's green and it spends the
Okay.
same way as a 20 or 100. It's difficult to count, but yeah, I was working with a male stripper, and he's like, I hope you don't mind that I'm paying you in ones. He's like, this is how I get paid. I'm like, dude, I don't care. Whatever you got.
Dude,
Green money is green money.
that is so gangster because he easily could have gone to the bank and gotten you a check, or he could have gotten a money order, or he could have done whatever. But he was like, nah, I'm going to pay for this in singles, brah.
Yeah. And they were probably oily, sparkly singles, but
Well,
whatever,
were they?
again, they spend the same.
Here's the question. So did you count it?
I took it to the bank and let them count it for me.
Uh-huh.
I told them, I trust you. This looks like a pretty fat stack. And I walked out.
That's so cool. That's funny story. So I have thoroughly enjoyed this. This has been really cool. I've been so blessed. Everybody that's come on, this has been just, it's like therapy. It's been really good. Tell people how they can reach you, plug yourself, do whatever you want right now.
Awesome. So again, and with Certain Path, it's all one word. So scrunch it together and search us online. Again, we're best practices group. So whether you're one truck or a 100 truck and you just want to grow, we work with everybody. So training, coaching, support, processes in one package. And so, yeah, just look up Certain Path online.
And it's plumbing, electrical, heating and air conditioning, and roofing, right?
Roofing.
Yeah. So, and guys, so I was a member. I was a member for some years with my previous employer, and I was a member in my own company. I absolutely love the organization. I was in a couple of practices groups, and I gained so much from Certain Path, which at the time was SGI, and before that it was Airtime 500. And I have all the plaques, and well, I guess I gotta find them, but yeah, all those success,
You have your rings and stuff.
Yeah, the rings and the diamonds and everything else. So yeah, it was really cool. Love being a part of the organization. If you're not a part of the organization, I would highly suggest becoming involved in a practice group. I know there's a lot of them. It's very noisy space right now. Certain Path's been doing it like a really long time.
25
really
years
long time.
this year. Yeah.
Yeah. But the Jim Abrams, it goes back even further, doesn't it? Because originally, or was it 25 with Jim Abrams?
25 with Jim Abrams, because it was 1999. Okay. Yeah.
99. So anyway, again, this is not a business podcast, but it's a very helpful group, and you make incredible relationships. Actually, the reason why I'm in Dallas is actually because of a connection I made on an SGI. So it's a great group. Find Estee, hire her. She's fantastic. Estee, thank you so much for coming on. I'm just going to do a couple of announcements here. I really appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. That was fun. I loved it.
Cool. All right. So cool. Okay, I'm wrapping it up. Really quickly, we have a bunch of great shows coming up. We have Tattoo Tales with Ian Jones. We have Road Tales with Rob Linus. We have, I cannot believe this, but I have Kenny Brooks, who has agreed today to come on the show, and he's like a famous guy. I mean, he's like the most famous salesperson in the whole country. Like he's well, anyway, he's a comedian. This is Kenny Brooks, the funny salesman. Watch his videos on YouTube. They're incredible. They're absolutely incredible. So thanks again. Next week, we'll be back on Thursday again, and we're going to rock and roll. Thank you so much, guys. All right.